For more on all of this, let us turn now to Alexandra Canal for more on these blockbusters. She's a senior reporter at Yahoo Finance. Alexandra, so good to see you.
Hi, Karina. How are you?
Very good to see you. How did Wicked and Gladiator movies do at the global box office this weekend, and how does that sort of compare to how Barbenheimer did in its opening weekend last summer?
Well, globally, these two brought in a combined $270 million at the global box office. The bulk of that came from Wicked at $164.2 million, whereas Gladiator II finished out the rest at a more modest $106 million. But still, both films did incredibly well, defying a lot of that expectation. Now, it wasn't as strong as what we saw from Barbenheimer, about 30% less, but that doesn't mean that this wasn't a major success, especially considering the genres of these two films. And it's sort of, you can make some comparisons to the Barbenheimer phenomenon last summer, but there are differences as well, especially if you consider the timing of these releases. I mean, Barbenheimer came at a very important time for Hollywood following the pandemic recovery, also the writer's strike, the actor's strike, that really clouded the industry as well. But the fact that we've seen such success with Wicked, which is a musical adaptation, these films typically don't do this well. That's a huge win for the box office.
So Wicked was obviously the bigger grosser at the box office this weekend, but do you think Gladiator II got a lift because of the marketing of Wicked? Do you think either would have made as much as it would have as a standalone movie?
I certainly don't think it hurts. I think the marketing blitz of it all is what makes it fun, right? I mean, you look at Wicked, which had a $150 million marketing campaign, over 400 different brand partnerships. You had partnerships from Lexus, Starbucks to Target. It literally was everywhere across your screens, across the TV. You couldn't really go out into the world without seeing some sort of marketing campaign. And I think Gladiator II certainly benefited from that as well. But at the end of the day, you need to have that audience buy-in. You have to have folks that want to go out, get out there, get off their couch and see these movies. And I think the fact that we saw such strong reviews out of the gate really helped both of these films. On Rotten Tomatoes, you have an audience score of 97% for Wicked. I think it's in the mid-80s for Gladiator II. Very strong scores there. And that just leads to more word of mouth. So if you have more word of mouth, you have more people talking about how much they loved these films, that's going to be mean that you're going to have more sustained audience over time. So that means in weeks 2, weeks 3, weeks 4, you're going to see those box office numbers continue to elevate.
So Alexandra, this is a newish kind of phenomenon, right? So what do you think made last year's so-called boys versus girls combo Barbie and Oppenheimer so unique? And are these 2024 versions, you know, a fair comparison? In other words, do these mashups really work?
I think it can work. At the end of the day, though, I think it's very hard to replicate what Barbenheimer became, right? I think it really took on a whole life of its own. It was very organic, the way it all came to be. You also had that nostalgia factor with Barbie. No matter what age you were, people know Barbie. You have that built-in IP. Oppenheimer was based on a true story. So again, some of that built-in IP really fueling that curiosity for audiences. You can say it was a similar story for the Wicked too, right? Because Wicked is based on the musical adaptation. You have Gladiator II, a very successful sequel. So I think there are certainly comparisons that you can make, but Barbenheimer was just so organic. It was this water cooler moment, this cultural phenomenon that is very hard to replicate. I think Wicked came close to it, but I think it's very, very hard to repeat what we saw last summer. But perhaps this is a new normal going forward, that every so often we can see these successful matchups. But I think it also speaks to the fact that it's these big budget blockbuster films that have a lot of star power, a lot of marketing power. Those are the films that are performing the best at the box office.
And how badly do you think this was needed for the overall box office and for Hollywood?
I think it comes at a really crucial moment. I mentioned earlier how we had that pandemic recovery. We had the Hollywood strikes that pushed out a lot of that inventory. A lot of theatrical movies were delayed, and now finally we're seeing some of that pick up. And it's not just these two movies. We also have Moana 2 coming out next weekend. That's going to be a huge success. Box office analysts have said we could see the best Thanksgiving box office week in nearly a decade, which would just be huge for the industry. And then if you look ahead to later later this year, we have that Mufasa prequel from Disney coming out as well. So Disney doing a lot of heavy lifting at the box office. We have the Mufasa prequel, we have Moana 2. Inside Out 2 has been the best performing movie so far this year. That came out earlier this year, a Disney production. And then also Deadpool versus Wolverine, that's a Marvel film, another Disney property. That's the #2 film at the box office so far this year. So Disney doing a lot of that heavy lifting, but then with Universal's Wicked and Paramount's Gladiator II, we have some other studios in the mix as well.